So here's an interesting choice: the Joker with Gary Glitter's Rock and Roll. And of course, I just watched. I haven't seen the movie, but yeah, I'm sure you've got some things to say about that. You do sort of address the whole Gary Glitter usage in your write up, of course. So, and I
Yep.
have to assume that it's a deliberate choice, partly for that reason, maybe. But I don't know. And like, given the controversy about Gary Glitter, it seems
Yeah,
fitting that a character like the Joker would, be soundtrack to it. So.
totally caught me off guard. I think he, probably did put it in there specifically to provoke people. I thought it was kind of a, I don't want to overdo it, brave thing, but he's risking something by putting it in there. Just that, people are going to jump all over him. As I mentioned in the book, the first thought is, well, does money go to Gary Glitter? No money goes to Gary Glitter. It goes to, I can't, whoever handles his, it doesn't go even to a foundation for his kids or anything. It just goes somewhere else that it's good. The money has nothing to do with Gary Glitter.
Right.
Anyway, Joker, yeah, I saw it twice. I saw it when it came out, and, it was, and I ended up writing about this. It was kind of in the middle of that Scorsese controversy. No, it wasn't. He was really referring to other superhero films, but it did come along when he wrote the piece. So I think it was sort of there in the background. I liked it. I liked it the first time, not quite as much as The Dark Knight. But went back, saw it the second time. I do think it's a good film. I don't know much about Todd Phillips. I checked the director. I checked his filmography just before we hooked up tonight. He did all the Hangover films, none of which I've seen. He's got his upcoming thing is a Hulk Hogan film, according to Wikipedia. Really? I don't know if that means with Hulk Hogan or about Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have the most. He doesn't have the most distinguished filmography in the world, but I think the Joker, it's just called Joker. Not
Joker,
yeah. I think it is a good film. And, when I was watching, I watched the Rock and Roll Part 2 scene again tonight, and I also rewatched the White Room scene, which is towards the end. And when I watched the White Room scene, I thought two things. First of all, that I'm also rewatching Mr. Robot right now, and I think Joker was definitely influenced by Mr. Robot. Now, I don't think you ever watched that, but you might be interested. What's that?
No, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, you might be interested in it because it's Sam Esmail that did Homecoming, and you got me to watch Homecoming. It's the same guy. Mr. Robot is so computer heavy, I call him Sam Email. Anyway, you can see the influence especially during the Cream scene, because Mr. Robot, they've got this whole organization called F Society, and they all don the F Society masks at one point. And that's what happens in the Cream scene, where all bedlam's broken loose and everybody's wearing Joker masks in the street, and it's just chaos. And the other thing that occurred to me, and I'll get back to Rock and Roll Part 2 in a second, but during the Cream scene was, you can't help, and we talked about this and we included it in Unshackled, but it's very much a Trump thing during the Cream scene, where he's being hauled away in a police car. There's just chaos in the street with cars being overturned and things on fire. And it's just total anarchy and total nihilistic. And the cop says, "Oh, terrible it is." And he goes, no, it's wonderful. And he smiles, "It's beautiful." And you think about, that's basically what Trump's leaving behind, right?
Yeah.
Ways.
Carnage.
Rock and Roll Part 2 happens, he's such a weird character in this, not necessarily the Heath Ledger version, different. With all this stuff in his background, and he's clearly unbalanced. But up until this particular point in the film, he hasn't done anything, I don't think, illegal. And finally, he kills a guy he used to work with when he was working. He was a sign guy, displaying signs, and he would don his makeup, and they'd throw a sign on him, and he'd hang out in front of stores with balloons. This one guy used to get on him, and then they kind of made up, but finally the guy comes to his house with another guy who he used to work with, and he kills the guy. And then he leaves behind the one guy who is a small person who he always got along with. He doesn't kill him, and he leaves him behind in his apartment. Walks down the hall. We don't see him change into makeup, but it happens somehow. And then he steps out onto this huge staircase outside of where he lives. And the camera's perched low, way at the bottom, looking up at him. And by the way, Rock and Roll Part 2 starts, I believe, as he's walking down the hallway. And then he gets out, he's at the top of the staircase, full Joker makeup and regalia. And he starts dancing. And it's this very liberating dance. Like by killing this guy, he's passed on to a new level in terms of his relationship with this alter ego. And the dance he does, it's very it's in sync. It's I don't know if it's improvised, but it is kind of sensual, the moves, and it reminded me of Mr. Blonde's dance from Reservoir Dogs. Somebody else might think of Jack Nicholson's dance in the first Batman film when he was in the art gallery, but Nicholson I thought was mostly just doing it for laughs. Maybe I'm wrong. I didn't go back and look at that. But in connection with the Gary Glitter song, which again, I don't know how you felt about that when you, I know we're slight age difference here, but I was certainly listening to Top 40 when it was a hit. You must have recollections of hearing it on the radio long before it became a staple of sports arenas.
Somewhat. Like I do remember it as a kid, but for some reason I don't remember a lot about it on the radio. I feel like I heard it elsewhere, but I'm certainly familiar with it. And when we started delving into KTEL, like it was very familiar to me. So
yeah, it probably did end up on KTEL compilations. When I used to hear it in 1972, it was just this really dark, weird song. Like I think probably as strange as anything that was on the charts at the time. Because it was almost without vocal. And did you compare it to Burundi drumming or something? And maybe the first
I haven't, but it does have that for sure. And I think probably Chuck Eddy or someone,
maybe Chuck did,
probably said. I mean, it's definitely got that, right? It's got that element.
It sounds like it's just the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
And and then it got turned into just this thing you'd hear it at sports, in sports arenas, and it kind of it killed the song in a way, right? Like the song.
And I would say in between those two strains, and this wouldn't have impacted us so much, but one thing you can't underestimate about that song is I believe I was going to say it had a second life, although maybe the first life never ended. But that song was huge in the UK in the late 70s and early 80s. Like it actually is, I think it was kind of considered one of the songs that in many ways spawned like all that new romantic stuff, like just the sound of it. And you would hear it in some of those records, like the early Human League records and stuff.
Because of the drumming,
they just sound complete, like they're just right out of that lineage. And I remember even, I was reading smash hits at the time a little bit in NME, and you would see Gary Glitter come up a lot actually as this weird sort of one-off, I don't want to say genius, but almost like just this weirdo, and like, wow, look at the impact this one song. And I think even some of those bands actually ended up like covering Gary Glitter. Like I know at least one band did a song like "Geo Touch Me" or whatever that one song, that other.
Yeah, I don't know his other hits.
The name of the song, but he did have a few hits in England. But he did enjoy this sort of vogue in the early '80s, which is kind of interesting. So, but yeah, then it obviously became the arena anthem that you mentioned here. So.
Yeah, so I didn't know anything about the early '80s resurgence. Anyway, so here it's kind of a dead song for me, and then suddenly it's alive again. And it
Yeah,
just
weird.
a perfect combination of the film and the character, and I think the location and the camera angle has a lot to do with it. And Joaquin Phoenix is dancing. It was kind of an inspired choice. And we kind of danced around. Gary Glitter got into trouble. I can't remember if his trouble was that he was downloading child pornography, or I think with him it was more than that. I think it may have actually been
If
having sex with underage
Well,
girls.
you said in your write-up, and you must have looked it up, that he was like starting a 16-year sentence. So I think that would be pretty,
Yeah,
a little more than maybe just,
yeah,
but I don't know.
probably. So to have this song in it, I assume that I don't know what kind of artistic control somebody like Todd Phillips has. Did he have to clear that with the studio? Did they push back against it? Who
Yeah,
knows?
you
But
wonder.
I'm sure it's an interesting backstory. I don't know if that's the end of Batman. These films, they go through cycles and they crisscross. I don't know if there's going to be another one with Joaquin Phoenix. It's probably a one-off, but I will say that for that one film, I think it is a good film.